Hi, good morning and welcome everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Really glad you could join us today. I'm Griff Palmer, the VP of Marketing at Positive Recovery. And Positive Recovery is really grateful to sponsor and offer the first of 3 webinars over the next 3 Fridays. If today's Good Friday in your spiritual tradition, we really appreciate you joining us before your holiday weekend and jumping on the webinar with us. At Positive Recovery, we embrace those struggling with addiction and relapse. We use the science of happiness and evidence-based treatment to help you thrive and create a sober, meaningful life. For you therapists and clinicians and those in helping professions joining today, we know the frustration of addiction and relapse. We know the passion and help and support you provide in your role, and finding a treatment resource for your patient or client to give them the care and fighting chance to begin a new life is really a crucial decision for you. So you can be assured our passionate and experienced staff at Positive Recovery use Dr. Powers' groundbreaking positive recovery curriculum and other evidence-based therapies proven to help clients overcome alcohol and addiction disorders. And if after the webinar this morning or the next couple of Fridays, you want more, there are a few resources. So I'll be putting some links in the chat. The first one is the Positive Recovery Daily Guide, Thrive in Recovery. This is a book you can purchase on Amazon that was written by our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jason Powers. And this life-changing book introduces what we call positive interventions that are designed to improve relationships, increase meaning and purpose in life, strengthen recovery, and balance emotional health, all while boosting overall happiness and well-being. So avoiding a relapse is a success in itself, but really flourishing in recovery is quite another thing. That's why these PIs or positive interventions are made to build a foundation that's tailored to help you thrive throughout the process. So we just recently put those daily positive interventions on a daily email. So I'll put the link to subscribe to those if you're interested. And Dr. Powers also hosts a podcast with Julie, our president, and we'll put those links in the chat too. So now let me introduce Julie, my amazing boss. Julie's a board member of TAP, the Texas Association of Addiction Professionals. She's a certified addiction RN and in the International Nurses Society on Addiction. She's got 28 years of professional experience in medical, clinical, operational, and financial management, and excelling in creating a culture of success. And mostly, besides energy levels, what you need to know about Julie is her favorite thing to say is woohoo. So with a big woohoo, I'm going to introduce it and turn it over to Julie. There you go.
Well, thanks, Griffin. Woohoo for everybody that's on the call. Welcome. I am Julie Didelfa, and I work as the president here at Positive Recovery. My team and I are grateful to be part of Positive Recovery Centers and help those who have a substance use disorder reclaim their lives and flourish. It's important for us to be the treatment center of choice, where clients and patients choose to come and employees choose to work. I'm honored to have met and worked with Dr. Powers for the last 15 years. And I remember when I first met Dr. Powers and interviewed with him, I knew almost immediately that I wanted to be part of whatever it is that Dr. Powers was up to. His love and passion and kindness were evident throughout that whole interview process. And the fact that he was totally wicked smart just made it even all the complete package. I knew that I could learn and learn from him, and I wanted to be part of. Didn't hurt that George Joseph was part of that, and it made for a fun interview for sure. I'm thankful after 15 years that I still feel fortunate to work with Dr. Powers every day. And it is just such a joy and a pleasure. Dr. Jason Powers is our Chief Medical Officer and creator of Positive Recovery Treatment Curriculum. Positive Recovery Centers is the only treatment center that utilizes this approach throughout the full continuum of care. Evidence that we are ahead of the curve can be seen in such recent publications such as Positive Psychiatry, a new scientific textbook written for psychiatrists by luminaries in the field, with recognition which also recognizes exactly what we have been applying for a few years now. Dr. Powers is board certified in family and addiction medicine and received his master's in positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. Powers has been recognized as one of Houston's top doctors 6 times by H Texas Magazine and was awarded the Compassion Award by Sierra Tucson. Dr. Powers is also a member of the editorial board of Addiction Prevention and Treatment Magazine. He has had blogs on Huffington Post and Psychology Today and is a published author of When the Servant Becomes the Master, an A to Z guide of all things related to addiction, and the Positive Recovery Daily Guide, a self-help guide designed to intentionally boost the drivers of human happiness, which is what we know as PERMA: positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. So if you would like to sign up for his podcast or daily email, you can go ahead and put your email in the chat, and Griff will definitely be pulling those emails and making sure that you get signed up. There are many things that bring joy to Dr. Powers. However, I know that his face lights up brightest when he is with family and friends or when he's watching crazy cat YouTube videos. So together, I am so grateful and thankful that we get to work and help people reclaim their lives. And now, Dr. Powers.
Thank you, Julie, and hello, everybody. So let's get right into it. So what is positive recovery? So it's a couple things. And the first thing I want to say about it is that it's not only positive. People see the name and they think, well, we just put rose-colored glasses on everybody and then sing Kumbaya, but it absolutely isn't. I just liked the name, and we did borrow a whole lot of evidence-based modalities from positive psychology. Positive recovery was available. I took it, and it is a curriculum. It is available to anybody that wants to apply it. It does require just a tiny bit of training, but I don't charge for it to be applied. It is also a modality for staff. So 50% is for the clients that we treat in the addiction space, and 50% is for staff. And I'll unpack this in a second. So why did I develop positive recovery? Why would it be needed? Well, the main theory is that addiction develops when happiness is pursued ineffectively, and recovery happens when people pursue happiness the right way. So little story of how it started is that George had us read a book called Delivering Happiness. In it, I learned about the field of positive psychology, which was eye-opening because I didn't know about it. I thought I knew about everything, and yet another evidence of my hubris was revealed to me, and I couldn't wait to go learn about positive psychology. I went and got my master's, and the rest is history. In the upper right corner picture is it's not completely random. It's of Aruba, and I think that's where George was flying back from when he read the book or decided he was going to have us all read it. And kind of short on time, I'm not going to go too much into the story, but it is an amazing book, amazing company. Zappos.com, by the way. And the founder, Tony Hsieh, unfortunately, I think he died in a fire in the last 12 months. So why would an improvement be needed? After all, we have made a lot of progress in the field. Of course, it started out a long time ago with lobotomies, not just for alcoholism, addiction, if you will, but for any mental health. And hysterectomies followed. People really thought if you got rid of the woman alcoholic, you'd get rid of all alcoholics. That's how stupid it was. AA came along in the 30s, and then antabuse, the first medication, cognitive behavioral therapy was around the time. Clonidine was discovered. Naltrexone came out, Camprol, buprenorphine and its derivatives, and then recently ABAM in 2007, the American Board of Addiction Medicine, where after tons and tons of research, we earned a table in the American College of Medical Specialties, and so people can actually do a fellowship and get board certified now in addiction medicine. So if we made all this progress, why would a curriculum or any improvement be needed? Well, the truth is we haven't made enough progress. What does that mean? Well, if you look at this, really speaks for itself, but there's high relapse rates both during and soon after treatment. And I ignored that for a while because I was, doing well in my own recovery and going to meetings. And then after, so many, so much exposure to the current research and, enough meetings, like scientific meetings, American Society of Addiction Medicine, that type of thing, I kind of started to feel like I was trapped in a box. And this is some artwork I have in my office. This is exactly how I felt when I was trapped in the throes of active addiction. Like I just couldn't get out. It was miserable. It was like being in jail. And the thing is, I sort of, when I realized that, okay, attacks on current treatments are not an attack on me. They're not an attack on AA. It's just the facts. It's just, we got to do something different. And so I started to look at what are the gaps that I could fill in the current treatment approach that might improve outcomes. Well, one of the things is that sobriety is sort of emphasized a lot over healthy living and optimal wellness. And I'm just going to go over these and then I'll unpack them. But these are the 6 gaps. There's a paternalistic top-down approach. Organizationally, staff are ignored. Treatment is too short, it's too narrow, and too avoidant. So speaking about the staff, I came up with this program and it was really hard to change a culture, even though at the time, I was part owner of the company and chief medical officer and all that. But sort of like dumping down on people, and this was part of just maybe a paternalistic top-down approach and not respecting everybody's input, is I kind of like this quote from The Little Prince, and that is, I couldn't motivate people to change. You can't change a culture unless people really yearn for the sea, then they'll build a boat. And that's what this says. Okay, so addiction causes crises, like a plane going down in flames, but you can't treat addiction like it's a short-term crisis, all right? The thing is, progress of patients is marked by cycles of recovery, relapse, repeated treatments over many years before few even reach stable recovery. And having like a pathology only orientation for crisis stabilization, it's not long enough. If this is a lifelong disease, we've got to sort of figure out how to extend it. It's also too narrow. It's mostly what we call red cape. Red cape is great. It's like Superman with his red cape. Superheroes only go get bad guys. So red cape is like getting rid of the bad, getting rid of disease, disorder, dysfunction, which is absolutely necessary, as opposed to green cape, which is building resources. If all you strive for is just the absence of the bad, you miss out entirely on the opportunity to flourish. There we go. It's also too avoidant. So relapse is not a dirty little secret. It can be part of recovery. Again, cycles of sobriety, maybe recovery, resumption of use, relapse, and repeated treatments over many years is the norm. And if all you do is avoid a relapse, you're really not preparing. Treatment providers that strive to help their clients flourish have to both prevent a relapse and prepare people to mitigate a relapse. We've got to normalize it. We can improve long-term outcomes for a range of chronic diseases when we intervene early. Like, we don't wait for a diabetic whose sugar's out of control to become blind and limbless before we intervene. And, we've got to prepare people. Pretending that the most likely process won't happen is simply failing to prepare, preparing to fail. It's the same thing. So, too narrow, meaning it's only red cape. These are really, really important skills. I want you to hear red cape stuff isn't bad. It's just solely what we've been doing for too long. And in positive recovery, there are more modalities that are red cape, that are business as usual, than green cape, because that's how important it is. But it's as important, at least, to add things that build the good stuff in life. It's not just the addiction space that's got a problem. It's our whole system, our whole medical approach is broken. Efforts to improve outcomes reveal limited success because relapse rates are high during and soon after treatment. And we really haven't touched the entire curve of a third of the people kind of just stop on their own without treatment. A third relapse and, go in and out of recovery, and a third don't. And, people want to be happy. They want quality of life, and sort of approaching a chronic disease in an all or nothing, black and white dichotomous approach doesn't work. And it really doesn't look real. So the paradox of what's been happening to everybody during the last, 70 years of amazing growth is pretty shocking. So let's go over some of these figures. This is from 1950 to 2010. I'm sure you could put 2021 and make things even more dramatic, but so everything is better. Like, people have more cars, houses are bigger, purchasing power is higher, but progress has not been limited to the material. There's more access to education, more music, more books. There's less violent crime and less soldiers dying on the battlefields than ever before. So everything is better, except human morale. The average people we consider close confidants has dropped 30%. The average household size has decreased 10% in the last 20 years. People, 25% of Americans reports that they have less or no confidants, almost nobody to confide in. Single parent households is up. It's almost 33% in America. And the thing is, what helps people thrive the most has gone down. Countless studies document the link between society and psyche. People who have close friends, confidants, friendly neighbors, supportive coworkers are less likely to experience sadness, loneliness, low self-esteem, and problems with eating and sleeping. And the single most common finding from half a century's research on the correlates of life satisfaction is that happiness is best predicated by the breadth and depth of one's social connections. So people matter, objects don't. And overall well-being, overall happiness is not biologic or genetic, because the Amish people live in the same place, breathe the same air, but they have 10% of the rate of depression and anxiety and substance abuse. And it has something to do with modernity, I guess, and perhaps what we mistakenly call prosperity. But the Amish don't have everything backwards. They've got a new airline, but I wouldn't recommend getting on it. So let's talk about our history and what is optimal wellness, and sort of why I'm arguing that there's something wrong with the medical model of disease. And that is, prior to World War II, psychology was interested in three things: helping sick people get well, helping well people flourish, helping people of high talent, like prodigies. Now it's been focused solely on the sick part. The medical model of disease has been the dominant model, approaching physical and mental wellness in the Western world for over 2 centuries now. Two centuries. Kind of forgot what a century was. So according to the medical model, disease is defined as departure from normal functioning, or metaphorical neutral state, say, which is corresponding to 0 on a wellness scale that spans from -10 to 0, then 0 to +10. US trained physicians, psychologists, other clinicians were exposed to and trained almost exclusively along this pathologic orientation to wellness. So as a result, our healthcare system overwhelmingly searches for problem areas to remove, disproportionately more than identifying positives like strength to build and nurture. The medical model approach has spawned an enormous amount of understanding and advancement in healthcare. So for example, we now have effective treatments to alleviate depressive symptoms, curb drug cravings, minimize adverse problems of addiction. Nonetheless, an obsession with a what is wrong approach fails to consider what is right. Think about a wellness week. I remember having these in college and having these at companies I've worked for, and there've been like a wellness week where somebody comes in and talks to you about maybe the flu or now COVID, hand washing, wear masks, social distance, that type of thing. Or like during the summer, it's like how to avoid getting food poisoning, make sure that, everything's refrigerated, don't leave the potato salad out before you guys eat it, or there might even be something on STDs or, sex addiction, but that's not wellness week. That's like sickness week. Speaking of optimal wellness, here is the metaphorical scale of -10 to +10. You can eliminate and build the bad stuff, or you can identify and build the good stuff, or you could do both. Most treatment approaches are unbalanced. There's this overemphasis on getting rid of the bad instead of building the good. And if you look at how many publications are red cape or identifying the bad versus green cape, it's shocking. It's 17 to 1. It's at least as important because you can eliminate depression without making somebody happy. If all you strive for is diminishing the bad, you'll only attain the average and you'll miss out on the opportunity to exceed the average. You can study gravity forever without learning how to fly. You can cure anxiety without teaching somebody optimism. So it's time for a change. And that's what I believe positive psychology has to offer, not as a replacement, but as an addition to. So instead of throwing out what works, how about we add? What is positive psychology in a nutshell? Well, it's not entirely new. It has a long history, but a short past. And there's ancients like Confucius, Buddha, Socrates. They were interested in human flourishing as well, major religions. So, positive psychology, think of Buddha, Confucius, and Socrates with research grant monies. You kind of put them all together, and this is what you get. And the difference between positive psychology and, say, self-help is that self-help isn't grounded in science. There's no evidence to what they're saying. Anybody can claim anything. And self-help tends to make people worse because if you're depressed and you read about something that is, guaranteed to work, when it doesn't work for you, you're like, well, now I know I'm really broken, right? So positive psychology also is not a denial of mental illness. And again, not a replacement, but in addition to. So we don't remove the clinician's tool belts. We just add extra tools on it. So what is happiness? Why is this a goal? Maybe it's better to ask, where do you find human happiness? We know it's not in money. After a certain amount, money adds very little to happiness. And that's a whole nother topic. But most people think you're happy when you're well fed, healthy, loved, comfortable, maybe safe, knowledgeable, celibate. Just kidding. Non-celibate and prosperous. But things aren't that easy because, there's a lot of people in third world countries who don't have these things and they're super happy. And most Americans, I'd argue, have these and aren't happy at all. So where do you find human happiness? Well, this is Dr. Seligman, the older bald guy. That was me when I did the master's, a little younger. And his theory of happiness is that it's found in positivity, in engagement, in relationships, meaning and achievement, which we're about to unpack. It's called PERMA. Just keep in mind that E really could be an F because it's flow, but PERMA doesn't sound as good as PERMA. So let's talk about positivity, positive emotions. Does pleasure cause happiness? I mean, feeling good is great, but let's say that let's do a thought experiment here. Let's say you could be hooked up to a pleasure machine like Neo in the Matrix, where you don't realize you're in this machine, but you can have everything you want, anything. The experiences of pleasure come with this, but if you see, you could be an NBA star, you could have her shoes, you can win an Oscar or whatever. Would you be hooked up to a machine? You wouldn't know the difference between that and reality, but most people say they don't want to do it at the end of the day because they would rather be human than just like a bunch of cells floating around. So, at the end of the day, positive emotions are part of happiness, but alone, feeling good alone isn't really going to do it. So positive emotions are great. Why are they part of it? Well, forever, we didn't really know why positive emotions happened. Evolutionary, we thought they were like a welcome side effect because we've known a clear purpose for negative emotions. They activate the fight or flight response so that, you feel scared, you feel angry, you can kind of defend yourself or run away and survive. Negative emotions were helpful for survival. Again, what were positive emotions good for? Well, we figured out, Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, she's a professor of psychology at UNC at Chapel Hill. She figured out that when people feel happy, she did these great experiments where like people were primed by watching like funny, Friends episodes, Seinfeld episodes. You could pick either one, but she figured out that things changed, like their peripheral vision became wider, and other studies showed that when you have positive emotions, it broadens your mind. You feel safe. You go and explore. You build resources, and that transforms you. Think about, a child that feels safe. Feeling safe is positive emotion. Will likely go and explore, meet new people. But if you don't feel safe, if you feel scared, you're going to cling on to the parent. Think of a kid that goes and meets new people and like, hey, how do you do that? They learn skills. They make connections. They transform. So that's how positive emotions is part of happiness. Most people think of, think of happiness, they define it as just feeling good in the moment. And that's only one part. So if you think of P and PERMA, that's sort of the online experience of happiness. Again, engagement, PERMA is PERMA. The engagement could be flow. And engagement is when you engage your character strengths in the right amount. What's the right amount? The right amount is not too much, not too little. You get into the flow zone when your strengths are challenged just enough. And if your strengths are over challenged, then you're going to feel anxious. And if your strengths are under challenged, you're going to be bored. So flow is optimal human action. It's when you're in the zone. Say, you're an athlete. You can kind of know what that's like. When you're really not thinking of yourself. You kind of lose touch of yourself and your mind, and you're kind of in the zone. Your strengths are being utilized. You're getting instant feedback. You're not really aware of things going on, but when you're done with that experience, you look back, you're like, man, that was awesome. Same with musicians in the groove. It's sort of, you're writing the music. And it's flow is, I recommend the book called Flow by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, but we can't get into everything in too much depth, but this is just a wonderful one. When you're in flow, obviously your strengths are getting challenged and you're growing and you're learning, but you don't just become more complex, although you become more integrated with those around you. Research has found that people that are into flow more are, that sort of me versus the rest, me versus you, me versus them, it dissipates. So people are more integrated. So it's not just a selfish endeavor. And then moving along the PERMA continuum, R's, relationships. Again, by far the greatest predictor of happiness in the literature is intimate relationships. People matter, objects don't. And we have known forever that, relationships are important. We've told people, get supportive relationships, but we really haven't taught people how. And one of the coolest findings from research and that I learned in getting the master's, and the coolest application I think that we teach our staff in the training and we teach our clients is how to be a better friend. And that's the work of active constructive responding. Again, that's its own thing, but we don't just like tell people, we don't just give lip service to, hey, have a good relationships. We teach people to be more magnetic and get those resources that help recovery. But riddle me this. Let's say, what does it mean when you come home at the end of a long day and somebody greets you and is, lavishing you with affection and, giving you food and all that? What does it mean? It means you're in the wrong house. Can't really hear anybody. I'm not sure if you guys think that's funny or not, but I still like it. Anyway, moving along the continuum of PERMA to meaning. Meaning and purpose are key. This is where sacred things lie. This is where faith is. This is a picture of Carl Jung, one of the influencers of AA, of Bill Wilson. He credits him with a lot. Carl Jung came up with that saying, spiritum contra spiritus, meaning, addiction is a spiritual malady and treatment is best to include a spiritual remedy. And, there might not be meaning of life, but there is meaning in life, and we make it. Everybody should try to learn before they die what they're running from and to and why. This is James Thurber poem, which sort of exemplifies it. And, I'm not somebody who has a lot of positive emotions. I'm not smiley. I'm not extroverted all the time, but I do have a lot of meaning. And the thing about PERMA, the PERMA, think of them as buckets. And I say that during meaning because a lot of my classmates, a lot of people that study this think that meaning and purpose trump the rest. So, I went back, I was asked to actually present at the 10-year reunion of the master's program at Penn. And like literally like that night, everybody went out and, the joke is, do we just sing Kumbaya? Well, there was some singing and, the introverts were like in the back going, oh, this makes me sick. Because, I just don't like being around too many positive psychologists. They're just too damn happy, meaning like it's just too much for me. But I do have a lot of meaning. I have a lot of relationships, a lot of the next one, a lot of achievement. And before I explain it, again, they're like buckets. You don't have to have all of them full. It's just as long as you're doing something on a daily basis, really to put drops in as many of them as you can. So is achievement just, like succeeding for the glory and gold? No, it is the peace of mind knowing that you pursued meaningful goals. And not everybody has this. It's one that Dr. Seligman added in his second reiteration of his theory of happiness. So at the end of the day, why is there such a good application of positive psychology to recovery? Well, if you pursue happiness in misguided ways, you can develop addiction. I believe the right way is the goal of recovery, because if your life is more rewarding than the promise of a relapse, chances are higher you will stay sober. So think about it. Trying to get trying to get pleasure, trying to decrease pain, that can lead to addiction. Drugs work in the pleasure center. Doing mind-altering things, activities like process addictions, include gaming. People enter these fake states of flow, and you can develop addiction that way. And real quick, video games are made to sort of shortcut and give a false flow, because think of a video game like on level 1, you have like a terrible gun, but the people you're fighting, if it's like World of Warcraft or whatever, the people you're fighting are also like level 1. They're pretty bad. And then your little character gets a lot better abilities and weapons, but then you're fighting people that are higher, and hours can pass. I mean, kids get seizures because they play so much. But that's not real flow. Real flow requires that it be real life and you be sort of conscious of it. So, obviously being on drugs, I used to be on everything but roller skates because I used to love to escape my mind. Losing sense of myself, time, and space was awesome. But of course, being on drugs is, you're not really conscious. And then, video games aren't real life. So it's not real flow. Addiction can develop when people are trying to fit in groups, like peer groups. A lot of teenagers would just want to fit in somewhere, and using might be a way to do that, or to stay in a relationship that's not so great. So addiction can develop that way. Meaning and purpose. A lot of people think that alcoholism and, any kind of addiction is a low-level search for God. You hear that a lot. Even outside of, traditional recovery groups, people say like, yeah, marijuana is very meaningful to me, or whatever it is that develops into addiction is very meaningful. And then achievement. And I think of this commercial in the 80s when cocaine was really bad. Like it's not bad anymore, but there was this, public service announcement. There was a guy in an elevator going in circles going, I have to work harder to make more money so I could buy more cocaine, so I could work harder so I could buy more money. So it's just on and on and on. So addiction can develop if you pursue happiness the wrong way. And abstinence is to recovery what thriving is to optimal health. Okay, so I'm going to review a little bit. In the United States, drug abuse addiction is a critical issue that calls to improve treatment strategies because it's chronic and progressive. Addiction removes autonomy, and relapse rates are high both during and soon after treatment. We've made progress, like in genetic and drugs that have come out and other research. We know it's a disease. There are a lot of effective treatments. like, and ABAM. So we basically have legitimacy, but we haven't made enough progress. I don't think the system is viable. Addiction develops because people pursue happiness in the wrong way. We believe that if you teach people to pursue well-being the right way, in addition to addressing things like shame and trauma, forgiveness, teaching people resilience is key, then you give them the full package and you help them thrive. So these are a lot of the modalities that we use. Like appreciative inquiry is something that I do with organizations to help them develop their own mission, vision, values, and we've done that internally. That's really great. That's instead of strategic planning, which tends to be very negative. But the application of positive psychology is broad. And I do believe that we owe the people that treat addiction as much more than we've been giving them, just like we owe people that have been going into treatment, we owe them a lot more. Because burnout is really bad. Like turnover rates are high in mental health, and addiction, it's the worst. So the thing is, if you're a business owner, if you kind of worked in leadership, think about this question. What's the most important resource an organization has? People will 99% of the time say, oh, it's the people that work for us, people that work for me. And then you look at their budget and it tells a completely different story, because there's very little to no meaningful staff development. I'm not talking about training that, puts people in compliance, like nonviolent crisis intervention and HIPAA and all that. Talking about like how much do you really invest in this if it's the most valuable resource, how much do you invest? And we put our money where our mouth is, and so do some really good organizations. And we take people offline, we send them through all the same trainings in positive interventions that we do in the master's program. And one of the side effects of the master's program is improved well-being of the students, and that's because the evidence-based positive interventions are kind of scattered throughout it. And that's what we do, and that's what I recommend. In addition to maybe looking at a way to improve outcomes for clients, think about like how can staff model health and balance if they themselves aren't balanced and living optimally. So it's just as important to treat the clients as it is the staff. These are more modalities, and I flew through that. God, I probably talk fast, but this is great because now we can do some questiones. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And let Griff take over.
Thanks, Dr. Powers.
Sure.
Appreciate it. What a great presentation. So a couple of questions that have come in. One from Michael says, I see joy as the highest positive emotion, but I've had very little in my life lately. Lockdown related, I guess. A year of isolation isn't healthy. His question is, how can you find joy in a negative environment?
Yeah, sometimes you can't, and that's the hard truth. The saying, everything happens for the best. I don't believe it, not for a minute. Try telling somebody that their child died. That things don't always happen for the best, but it is always possible to find the best in what happened. And one of the last webinars I did, I kind of used this example, and there was a professor at Penn, he was a physician, talked to our class, and he's a pediatric hospice physician. So he tells parents that their kid is not going to make it, and he doesn't rescue them or try to minimize their pain. He understands that, he gives them their anger, but he actually uses, he was talking about hope. He uses that construct of hope in this way. He's like, he asks the parents, what do you hope for? And his words are, indubitably, they say that they hope that this is a dream or a nightmare. They're going to wake up and their child's going to be all right. And after some time and the dust settles, he says, okay, given the set of circumstances, what do you hope for? And the answers that parents come up with is, well, I hope we can take our child home, and I hope they can have a good death, and And again, this is without minimizing or rescuing. So, you know, the pandemic has caused a lot of loss of life. It's caused more domestic violence, more suicide. There's a lot, I mean, a lot more substance abuse. Alcohol sales have gone up. There's a lot of bad indicators, right? To say, you know, to say that, well, at least there's a silver lining is sort of callous. But I think that, you know, in a really bad situation, to expect to feel joy isn't the right response in that context. However, this too shall pass might help. I'm not going to, you know, try to give platitudes like that, but, you know, sometimes time and just, you know, distracting oneself until it passes is sometimes the best we can hope for.
Got it. Debbie didn't put it quite in the form of a question, but can you talk about gratitude and the role that it plays?
Yeah, I love it. Great question. So there's been more research on the positive effects of gratitude than anything else. So yes, gratitude is humongous. One of the greatest studies that I like to quote is we compared lottery winners to people that kept a weekly gratitude journal. And at first, naturally, the lottery winners' happiness was higher because, you know, they got 10,000 Egyptian cotton thread count, whatever. And so their happiness was higher. But at 6 months, they were equal. And at 1 year, the gratitude journal won out every time.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, gratitude is huge. I do like a whole thing on that.
And you listed some of the tools that get used in the curriculum and the Positive Recovery University that you do with all of our employees. Can you talk about the VIA a little bit?
Sure. So the VIA is a Value and Action Survey, which was the result of 2 years of heavy duty research by some of the smartest people in the world, like, God, what the hell's his name? Anyway, when Seligman and Peterson, yeah, that's who it was. When the founders of positive psychology got together and they're like, well, you know, we want this to be a science. Well, we need something to measure. They're like, well, let's measure something in humans that's not like an inborn ability or a trait, because you can't change those traits, like perfect pitch, blue eyes, beauty, speed, whatever. Like, no matter how hard I tried, there's no way I was ever going to beat Carl Lewis at running. I'm aging myself because there's that, Usain Bolt. So there's things that like really don't have a ability to change with work and aren't kind of valued for themselves. And they also look for things that had some ethical, some moral value. And they came up with character strengths. And also they wanted them to be universal human character strengths. So they had to scour the literature and find there's all these criteria. And there's one like trait that Americans love, individualism. That's just not a universal thing, because in Asia, like they have the saying, the tall bamboo gets cut. So if you kind of show off, like do a football touchdown dance like we do in Asia, that'll bring shame on you and your family. Here, it's hard to imagine how that's like not a good thing for most people. And so the VIA is a free survey that you can take. You could go to AuthenticHappiness.org or the UPenn website. And
I put the link in the chat.
Perfect. And it ranks the 24 universal human character strengths that they distilled everything down to, and it gives them to you. And doing that is a positive intervention. And I mean, really, strengths is weeks of material. So I'll just leave it there. There's a lot with strengths.
Sure. And you want to talk about the webinar on next Friday and the following, just a little bit?
Oh yeah.
Give them a little preview of what else you were going to cover. I know people are asking. One person asked if we're going to put this recording out. We may edit it, but there's Dr. Powers has a number of videos on our website you can see there too that have a lot of this content in it. But preview us. Give us the flavor for next Friday.
Okay, so I'm super excited. The next one is resilience. So we're going to go over the ABCs, and if we have time, the ABCDEs of resilience. And this is the work of Seligman and Albert Ellis, in a kind of easy to apply format. You could turn around and use it. And I'm most excited for the one 2 weeks from now, which is art as therapy. And it's not art therapy. So I'm not an art therapist. I don't get people to draw and all that. I'm going to go over, it's wonderful. I'm going to go over the value of art in psychological assistance, say. And I'll just leave it there, a little teaser. But it's the first time I'm doing it, but it is like a culmination of about 10 years of my own kind of personal interest, and it's I don't know. I think it's gonna be wicked fun.
Right. So I'm actually Facebook Live in this. So one of the questions on there was, you know, having treated hundreds or thousands of people in your, you know, addiction medicine career, are there any like common characteristics you see of people that have success in long-term recovery, like a particular seed that was planted, or, you know, anything they did that just stands out, like as a group, that made them, you know, stand out while they were there?
Yes, absolutely. I would say love is one. Two is finding a replacement. I'd say those two things. And so that's other people matter, right? And you know, enriching their lives with something else. Now, doesn't mean that, well, you know, I was drinking and now I'm going to go jogging, right? Because it's a very complex issue, right? Addiction and recovery. But I'd say those are the two ones that are kind of universal.
Right. And just since we're on the positive recovery curriculum, and I know you're very Kaizen philosophy, constant improvement, everything's always, you know, and you pay attention to a lot of other science and medicine. What do you see coming in the next year or years that will continue to change the field of treating addiction and substance use disorder?
I think, I don't know if psychedelics in recovery is gonna be a passing fad or what, but I'm just hearing a lot of echoes of that. I don't know. I mean, you know, I am now got gray. I still feel young, and so it's hard for me to like speak as if I'm, you know, 90 years old. But in my time, I will say I've seen a lot of fads come and go. I think at the root of it, we've done a lot right. I think people getting together and helping each other in a non-competitive way is amazing, and it's not going away anytime soon. And I think it's really hard to match it.
Yeah, one of my friends said the only thing alcoholics ever microdose on is the 12 steps.
Well, that's the only thing people do in moderation.
Correct. So I think that's about it. I don't see any other questions coming in from the attendees, but we really appreciate everybody that attended today. I put the registration link. If you registered for this, you can use the same link to come on the next 2 Fridays, which is April 9th and April 16th. But please share the link with your friends and bring them back. And we'll be getting the CEU surveys out. So anybody that's here for a CEU, we'll get that to you. And any parting thoughts, Dr. Powers?
Get vaccinated, wear masks, social distance.
Great. Yeah, everybody take care of yourselves and prosper and have a fantastic holiday weekend. We really appreciate you, Dr. Powers. Thanks for taking the time with everybody today.
You got it.
Yeah, thanks.